All right, being at 3 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the agenda. The agenda is the public hearing, so
So moved. Second.
any further discussion?
Question, under the public hearing, is this and intent to adopt the ordinance, so we're gonna do both today?
I'd say and or. We can, that's gonna be up to us at the end there, whether you guys wanna table it to a regular meeting to decide.
I was just,
It's gonna depend on our input here, so.
Yep.
If that's okay.
It's okay, Sam? That makes sense?
Well, and I think,
Or what do you want, Sam?
well, I think what I'm thinking is if it's something that there's not gonna be major changes to, then maybe you could do it today. It depends how much, if there's a lot of wording and things that have to be changed.
Okay,
Thank you.
and or is what I was.
I think that's accurate, that's fine.
that was it.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll have Sam you don't have to go through it word for words here, Sam, but our county attorney will kind of skim through here and some of the major.
Well, I guess I just look at it a couple different ways. One of just as a 5,000-foot view here, it says our attempt to comply with our duties under the law that legalized adult use cannabis is that the county, any counties in Minnesota's jurisdiction is really limited to time, place, and manner. And what we have here is based upon the Office of Cannabis Management under the same law had to provide a model ordinance. And this is based upon this model ordinance that was provided. And where it may differ again from other counties is time, place, and manner as far as the distances away where places can be located, the number of businesses, specifically, I'm looking here, specifically, like section 3, the buffer requirements on 3.1. And then, and in section 3, I guess overall, that kind of gets into really the heart of what a county can do in case odor mitigation, security, light and pollution. And then in 3.2, the cultivation and all the different things that has to do with manufacturing, retail, delivery, testing facilities, and different type of temporary events. I know from or when we had the prior, I think it was at a work session, we should have, I believe, certain things like in that section, the 3.1 to 3.2, reflect the input that we received at that meeting from the work session from the county board, as well as in 3.3, the hours of operation. And then also a 3.4, there was some discussion about signed ordinances, and that's reflected there. And also, what was sort of decided either subsequently or sort of in that meeting is that this gives a little bit of a structure at this, but also it bounces it back to Houston County's signed ordinance that's already in place. And then there also was in that 3.2, there was some discussion about whether it's a CUP or an IUP, and you're seeing the IUPs being used per the board directive. Otherwise, that's kind of what, just a 5,000-foot overview there. Well, I guess one thing I guess I'm really missing is that there was the direction of the board to basically allow the municipalities, if they have an ordinance in place, to regulate time, place, and manner themselves, as well as registration requirements. And if the municipality does not have one in place, then this ordinance would control.
So, are we we taking input from the public first, or are we gonna kind of walk through it and then take input?
We can walk through it if you'd like and then take input.
I got a
I may answer
a
some
number of questions I want to ask.
Ask away.
All right. And Sam, you're probably the one that I would be asking this to.
Sure.
On page 3.
Yep.
The retail registration. An approved registration issued by, that's the County of Houston, correct?
And what section are you looking at here?
Third page.
Third
third
page,
page,
2-1, 2-2.
Item 12.
Item 12,
Item 12.
retail registration.
Oh, okay, item 12, okay.
That's the County of Houston, right?
Yes,
So for our ordinance, it isn't insert, it's going to be the County of Houston.
yes.
Now when I flip location change, the way that reads,
The,
I'm on page 5, 2.3.5,
Yep.
location change. When you read that, the state licensed cannabis retail business shall be required to submit a new application for a registration under 2.3.2 if it seeks to move to a new location still within the legal boundaries of Houston County. Or if a state licensed cannabis retail business seeks to move to a new location still within the legal boundaries of Houston County, it shall notify the office. Is that duplication?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess you could do it a number of different ways. I don't know. It just gives you, I just see it just gives us an option of how it wants to be handled. If you want it directly, just goes to the Auditor Treasurer's Office for the proposed location change. I think you could do that.
But then that's not somebody coming from outside the county into the county.
No, it's if
It's
you,
only somebody that's already licensed and registered in Houston County that can move to a new location.
correct.
Okay. So the limiting of registrations, the Office of Houston County Auditor Treasurer shall limit the number of cannabis retail businesses to no more than 4 under this ordinance. So you got 4. It doesn't say if Houston County has 4 active cannabis retail business registrations, the Office of shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis retail businesses. If we have more than 4, how are we going to do that? Is this by lottery? First come, first serve? Or you have to be registered by such and such a date, and then it's just a question of how we're going to do it.
Well, and I guess the suggestion would be what I've heard is a lottery. Is what I've heard is the main suggestion, just do it as a lottery.
Do we have to
Well,
note that
well-
someplace?
Well, lottery is the state doing the lottery.
But we could do it as well.
We ain't gonna do no lottery.
Well, okay, the state issues all those 150 licenses, total of 750. If
Well,
we've got 8 people that have a license from the state and come into Houston County and want a permit, but we're only allowing 4, who gets the 4?
That's up to the state to figure that out.
What is it?
This is the registration part.
Registration within the county.
Yep.
Well, that would require them to all.
The
come
state
in.
would have to look at our local ordinances and the state would see that we were allowing 4, so then they would have to pick the 4.
There you go.
No,
Why not?
the state doesn't pick the 4. They give, if somebody's got a
The
retail.
state is gonna look at our local ordinances, and then they're gonna say, okay, Houston County says 4. Then they'll make the determination which 4 of their applicants will get a license. That's the way I'd look at it.
It's not the way I read
I
it.
agree.
Now,
I mean,
Amelia,
we're dealing with unknowns here, we get that, but
would you, is it your understanding, Amelia, that they come to us first and then they go to the state, correct?
Yeah,
And so,
they come to us first to see what our,
yes, and
ordinance.
so you're saying, Commissioner, that you envision a scenario where 8 people meet our criteria and then the state decides of those 8, which are the 4 that we're going to allow? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm asking.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. My understanding, the way I understood this to be drafted is that you would come in here and Amelia, if you did understand it differently, but is that we'd only allow 4 to go on to the state.
So would you do that first come, first serve?
Well, again, you have to make a decision, and typically it's been done through a lottery.
Well, I thought they were we're looking at them both at the same time also. Are there two separate reviews?
Well, there's an assumption here that first they have to make all of our criteria, and you have to not be in a municipality
Time,
that
place.
has that.
Right.
So then, if you would get to a situation, but I always thought, Amelia, the way it is that, because they look at them together, but yet, it's like they have to meet our stuff to get the license unless we're dragging our feet. Then they can issue it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, the problem I have with that is the state is going to issue 150 retail licenses, 75 to the special ones, 75 to the others. Each is allowed to have 5 retail operations
Throughout the state.
throughout the state. So if somebody goes to the state and meets all the state's criteria and meets their requirements and files for a license and gets their retail license, now they're allowed 5. They can come to Houston County and register for a license.
And again, there's a lot of moving parts here, but my understanding is like Amelia had said, is that this is done at the same time, in that for them to get that state license, they would have to meet all of our criteria.
That second paragraph bothers me because it says, if Houston County has 4 active cannabis retail business registrations, the Office of Houston County Auditor Treasurer shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis retail businesses.
Well, but isn't the question we're asking here is how we decide which are the 4?
Yeah, that's the
Again,
question.
to go back to where you started, my understanding would be a lottery, is that if there's 8 of them, you put 8 in the bag, draw out 4.
Okay,
So I look at this, there's two things going on here. First, you need to be registered with the state or Houston County to be one of those 4. No more than 4 that are gonna have registered. Then those people will go to the state and say, hey, I wanna have a license from the state of Minnesota to do business in Houston County. And as I was reading some of the material, you can't have more than one sub-business, I guess, because like I say, you have a license, you can have 5 locations. You can't have all 5 locations in Houston County,
where does it say that?
underneath the state statute stuff. That they can't have it have more than one substation, or I keep calling it substation, in the same community. And in our case, I'd call Houston County a community, La Crescent is a community, and Caledonia is a community, because those 2 are the 2 that have their own ordinance. That's how I'm reading it. But you have a registration for the county of Houston to even apply to the state of Minnesota to get the license to do the business, is how I'm interpreting.
And it's kind of, it's kind of that way, but yet it's kind of like Amelia had said, it's kind of like they're doing it at the same time. But they'll get to a point in their examination, the state paperwork, have you complied with all the Houston County regulations? And then if we're not moving forward in a timely manner, they can still grant it even if they haven't met our regulations, is my understanding. But it's like, we're not really in some ways a condition precedent, because they sort of do it together, but yet they can't exist without us unless there's a certain circumstance. But again, I think our focus should be, as with Commissioner Burns' question, is what we know is we can have 4, and there may be questions, if we pick 4, there may be somebody raise an objection because of this or that Office of Cannabis Management rule, that they cannot be one of our 4, but that is really for the state to decide, not for us. My opinion on that.
Okay.
A final point on that, I'm just saying that this 4 that we're looking at under 2.6 here is our limit, is basically what we're saying.
The county, now the municipality could have 2 or 3 or whatever. But that's the county one. So if there would be, if you're not a municipality that has a ordinance, then you would fall under this ordinance that we're looking at today.
We'll have plenty more than 4. I think we'll have more than 4
In the county or in the cities?
in the county. Right now, no city has an ordinance, so you got La Crescent and Caledonia are underneath our ordinance till they come with their own. And I think we'll have more than 4. If Caledonia and La Crescent come with their own ordinance, they can allow as many as they want. Then we're down to 4 besides those municipalities.
Correct.
But currently, it's all of Houston County, including every city,
Until they do their own ordinance.
until they do, if they do.
Well,
Look at Rochester and Olmsted County. They're letting Olmsted County take care of it. They don't have anything to do with it. All right.
all right,
They're also adhering to the 1 per 12 rule too.
Yeah, that's right. Homestead is, yeah. So that was my question there. Minimum buffer requirements, 3.15, where it's the distance between retail businesses is 1,500 feet. I think that's a abnormally high distance. I mean,
1,500 feet.
Right now, we're covering all the cities. If Caledonia or La Crescent has one on Main Street and another one that wants to be on Main Street, Main Street isn't 1,500 feet long. So I think that's too close. Or too far, excuse me,
I
too
think that's
far.
why they had that in there, to keep the concentration of stores so close to each other. I think that's why they had the legislature allowed this statute to keep it spread out. That's the way I look at it.
I just don't agree with the 1,500 feet myself. That was me. Moving on. So when you read all of this, you get down to page 8 in the 3.2s, the zoning and land use. These are our prohibitions as far as where they can be and what they, one of the conditions that's gonna go with any or all of these is they have to meet 342 requirements, right?
When you say,
Correct.
So if you take 3.2.1 of our ordinance, prohibited on residential, commercial, and industrial, permitted with an IUP with a 5-acre limit on agricultural. That's gonna be limited to the 342.25 and 342.30 of the cannabis statute. And if we look at that, 342.3 says indoor is up to 30,000 square feet, outdoor is 2 acres. We're calling for 5. We should be at 2,
and again,
up to.
up to 2.
Well, we could change it to 2.
I'm just because that's what it says in the state statute.
and if you want to do that, we can do that. It's up to the, I just want some guidance here from the.
The 5-acre came at our discussion.
Yeah,
And so that would be in 3.21, the second bullet, permitted with an IUP with instead of a 5-acre limit, it's 2 acres? Okay.
the way the statute reads is they might go to 4 acres, depending on the demand that comes to the state, but currently it's 2 acres.
Amelia had a comment.
Well, I was just gonna say, or do we remove that reference altogether? That way, if 342 changes, we aren't ending up with conflicting information here.
So go precisely what 342 says instead of,
Yeah, because you default to that if it isn't in there.
Yeah, just remove any reference to an
Just
acreage
strike
limit.
that then? All right. I think that would
I
make
guess if
sense.
that's what you guys wanna do.
that sounds fair, yep.
Permitted with an IUP pursuant to 342.3.
Well, I mean, we can put it in there, but you don't have to, because that's what's gonna happen.
Okay.
If we don't control it, it's gonna fall back in the state.
And then when you go down on the next page, at page 9, all of those have statute requirements that cover each of them.
Yeah.
Question is on the cannabis retail, and I think we've already answered this, but we're only allowing one licensed permit in Houston County. So somebody that has a license and is allowed to have 5, they're only allowed to permit 1 in Houston County.
I'm confused, so,
The 150 licenses that the state issues, each has 5.
okay.
Somebody gets a license from the state, they're allowed 5 permits. We're only allowing 1 of those 5 in Houston County. We aren't gonna allow somebody to come in and take all 4 permits. They're only getting 1.
For business.
1 per business, or 1 per license. Right?
Well, and I guess is that,
One permit.
Right. But the way the ordinance reads,
yep,
it doesn't say
that was what I was
we're
gonna say.
limiting them to 1 per licensed.
I was gonna say, we'd have to add that.
I think we should. I mean,
I mean, if you want to, that, we could do that.
it's up to the board. It's not just me. I'm just,
That's,
So only one outside entity can have a license in Houston County.
right. I mean, we could have 4 applicants in Houston County that aren't Houston County residents. Each of them has the ability to have 5, but only 1 is allowed. Each of them are only allowed 1 in the county.
What you're saying is we're gonna allow 4 permitted businesses from 4 different
Applicants.
or licenses.
and that'll have to take some work because,
I'm just asking because,
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just saying to actually make sure that we cover what you want to do, because you know how companies can be different
Different names.
different names,
Different-
different entities. And I understand what, I'll see what we can do in that. If you want, if that's the direction of the board, I'll see if I can get some language.
I just wouldn't like to see somebody come in here and take all of our permits from the same business, the same
All right,
business holder.
I'll look at
How
that.
could you word that?
I don't know. That's why Sam's here.
Yeah, I'll look at that.
Not me. That was my only question on that. Then when I get down to the temporary, this is on page 10, and it's section 4, temporary cannabis events. Do we, when you read the 342 statute on temporary events, they talk about various sales by retailers, various businesses that can be involved with the temporary event. Should our temporary cannabis events only be sponsored by a Houston County permitted retailer? They can have other people under their umbrella doing the event, but the only one that can sponsor it is a Houston County
For me,
permitted retailer, be it micro business, meso business, or retail business.
Would that be something, Amelia, that would be part of an IUP, or is that something that we would do in a different way? Because that's how we talked about these businesses, the nuts and bolts of it would be covered in the IUP process.
Right.
Can I just,
I'm sorry.
up at AMC, Washington County went over their ordinance at a meeting. And they eliminated, that's not required to host temporary cannabis events. That's not required by the statute. So they said they're not gonna allow temporary cannabis events or mobile businesses like food trucks, it'd be weed trucks, whatever you wanna call it, cannabis trucks. So they just said, we're not gonna allow that. But they also didn't have a limit on businesses either, but, they just went past that cannabis event thing to not allow it.
Currently, we have it in our ordinance, so
Yep.
then,
We could just take it out.
I mean, this was in the model ordinance,
Yep, yep.
and so it can be stricken, yeah.
I can understand restricting it or taking it out because, do we want another Woodstock in Houston County?
Well, and another thing too, for advertising, they didn't allow, it has to be 2 fixed signs on the business and that's it. They're not gonna allow banners, signs on, along the streets and such. It has to be fixed signs. You know how you see campaign signs stuck in the grass? They're not gonna allow that.
Right.
In Washington County.
So we can remove that and then at least so
Could,
we
I
get a
mean,
better idea of
the
what they
questions
look
I
like.
have, when the public comes up with their questions, I mean, that's what the public hearing is about, to hear from them. I just have questions before they come up.
And one of the things you could think about that too is, if you have, you have to make some reasons behind this, is as those type of events stretch our law enforcement, we don't have a lot of, we don't have any, really any hospitals in the county. And so, for what we would have jurisdiction over, I could see some reasons why, being unique to us and our size.
Plus, it can be a conflict of our public use ordinance that we already have on file.
Yeah.
Yep.
My last question. On page 12, section 6, local government is a cannabis retailer. Why? I know it gives us the right to do that, but why would Houston County ever want to be a retailer?
Well, it just says it can be. It doesn't mean we're going to be. If we wanted to be a municipality that has a store, we can do that. It's an option under the statute.
Do we then use up one of the 4 by doing that?
Probably.
I don't believe that counts against that number.
No, it doesn't. If a municipality wants to do it, it doesn't count against the number.
Personally, I don't see any reason.
But I don't see anybody that would want us to take that up and do the work and all the paperwork and,
Yeah.
unless you want to, Bob,
I personally don't see any reason to keep section 6 in there. Why would, I don't see us doing that. We're competing with private entities.
I think it's just in there for an option.
Yeah.
And if we don't, if you strike that, then we're just controlled by 342.
Yeah. My opinion. Okay.
So what's the consensus? Do we want to leave that in, or would you want to strike that, or?
I'd go along with striking it. Consensus.
Any Commissioner Sherwood?
Doesn't matter to me. Yeah. We can strike it out of there if you'd like.
Unless somebody has any other, I'm gonna put an X through that then unless.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
Not either, but.
And then as long as we're
So we're
talking,
striking that one. We're striking the temporary cannabis events.
yeah, so would section 4 then be,
And the advertising, we should just keep it to 2 fixed signs on the exterior of buildings. No street advertising or banners or portable signs.
that is, Amelia, that's covered under our regular sign ordinance then?
Our sign ordinance doesn't, it pretty much just cites statute,
Okay.
so there really isn't a lot.
Is that something we need to add language to, or something you think we could rely on the,
It is limited within 342,
okay,
isn't it, on billboards and? some other
342
stuff?
does have a limitation, yes.
okay, so then we would
By
just
that.
go back to the 342 definition.
All right.
So I have it, we'd strike section 6, section 4, and then, section 4, and then that, I'll look at on 325, that cannabis retail, if we can limit language regarding permitting, one permit per entity. Then, we'll strike in 321 cultivation, the second bullet, permit with an IUP with a number of limit, we'll just rely on 342. And then we have the sign language, and then there was the original thing that you said, Commissioner, about, I have to add Houston County in, number 12.
Under section 3, 3.1, then number 5, is that something that you just want to remove, or is that something you guys want to, where you want to look at changing
Which one?
the distance?
The 1,500 feet?
Yeah, the 1,500 feet under 3.1, then number 5,
page 6.
on page, yeah, bottom of page 6.
Well, I think that's something we should keep in there to prevent somebody that gets a license to operate 5 businesses. I'm not saying that they probably would, but they could have 2 or 3 right next door to each other. I don't know why they would, but, you know, unless I'm looking at that wrong, but.
It's just, in my opinion, 1,500 feet is a ridiculously high number to require 2 businesses to be separated by. I mean,
I think another
that's
way,
5 blocks. I mean,
I think another way to say that, and we've talked about this in the past, is that a good rule of thumb is to treat this like alcohol. And Third Street across, or we have Oka, or, you know, or here you have bars that are closer together, so why are you treating this differently? But the statute allows us to be set at 1,500 if we want to.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's really, I guess it's up to this 5 here, what you want to do on that.
Why would we want to?
I just think it's a ridiculous
No, why would
restriction.
we want to? I'm agreeing with you. Why would we want to? If you have a business district, wouldn't you want your businesses in a business district instead of spread way out? Keep better control over them that way.
What's your feeling, Jake, on that? You're a city of Caledonia. You're probably gonna have your own ordinance.
Why don't we just go to public comment here, and then we could discuss that later? Get some input.
This is just discussion for us. So.
Anything else?
Nope, that was it for me.
Anybody else?
I think it covered it pretty, yep, I got my questions.
Bob?
No, I'm agreeing with Bob on that one. So,
Greg?
Good.
Okay, we'll start out with public comment. I'm not gonna put a time on you guys, cause you know, there's not many people here, so. Please come forward with your comment and,
One at a time.
one at a time preferably, and state your name, and it's open to the public for comment.
Pretty happy the way it looks to me.
How's it going? Too quick, well,
All the way
right
up.
up to the
You
microphone.
gotta come up to the microphone, Greg.
Recording.
okay, I'm gonna sit down quick. So I have one comment, I guess.
Name?
State your
Oh,
name.
sorry, Brent Welch.
Yep.
My one comment about the event thing. Keep in mind, when we do a lot of events over in Wisconsin, we use cannabis events as an educational tool. Sitting down, educating the public on the product, the plant. You take away the ability to do events, you eliminate being able to outreach to the older lady down the street that has questions, that maybe doesn't want to come into the store. Be careful eliminating events. I mean, I understand restricting what can be done, where it can be done at, but I see a lot of good events happen that gets a lot of education out to people. That's
Well,
one.
if you wanted to have an educational event, I don't see any problem with that. It's just, are you
Can't
gonna
have
be?
cannabis there.
Oh, you can't smoke cannabis there? Is it?
Or consume, or it just makes it real gray. You know, if
Okay.
grandma has a question of how to consume this product in the proper way,
Yeah.
kind of hard to do it when you can't have cannabis on site or at the event. Two, with the question with the licensing, with back and forth of, we applied for our license in Minnesota. Before we could figure out what was going on, that whole lawsuit came about and shut the lottery down. Lotteries scare me. I saw it happening up in Minnesota. They were starting to get real picky and choosy on who they would allow to come into a lottery. Me personally, time, money I've invested, lotteries scare me,
Hence the lawsuit.
hence the lawsuit. So those are just a few things. My biggest concern is, not the state, is that I've spent time and energy trying to get this working in this county, the shop that we got going. Some out-of-stater or some bigwig comes in all of a sudden and drops down an application before I get mine. I applied for social equity, we got it. But there is a chance that somebody gets it before I do in this whole lottery system. Somebody comes over from La Crosse that has buco bucks and just wipes out my business that I've been building for over the year. That's just another concern. So, that's about it.
Okay.
So from the perspective of permits in Houston County, if we put a limit of 4 on, you're in Caledonia we're talking about right now. How, from your perspective, what's a better way to go?
What do you mean?
So we've got 10 people that have requested a permit from Houston County. We're only allowing 4.
That's a good question.
How are we gonna do it? start flipping coins, pitch quarters.
Yep,
The lottery, first come, first serve, that's a dangerous thing.
very. So yeah, I guess that's something you guys will have to figure out, but,
Gee, thanks.
yeah, you're welcome. No, that's just one of, a lot of people in my shoes is concerned, especially being right on the river. We were the only ones to apply for a retail license in this county. Somebody just across the river, not hard for them to pop one up. And I don't think you're gonna get too many more than 4 applying here anyways, just on the county size, but.
Given the size of our county, I don't see that either.
I agree.
But the thing I look at is, we're bordered on 2 non-states, Wisconsin and Minnesota, or Wisconsin and Iowa. We're right on that corner, so you got Iowa coming up, you got Wisconsin coming over, La Crescent's an easy access, Caledonia's easy access, Heightson's even easier, but I think we'll get more than 4 when all comes
All done.
to fruition.
But they're also going across the state lines in violation.
That isn't gonna matter to them.
Are you as a retailer, have you seen any rules from the state on what you can and can't do? I mean, are you as a retailer, do you have to make sure people that are buying are from Minnesota?
No, not at all. That's, no.
As long as they're 21, that's it.
Once it's in their hands, that's there. I mean, just like Illinois or Michigan or Colorado so
It'll be up to the ATF or whoever to
yep.
enforce
And
that.
then honestly, at this point, they don't care. Like, they don't. They have way bigger things to worry about. Here's the funny one. The products that I can sell in the stores in Wisconsin don't have limits. Like, Minnesota actually has limits. Wisconsin's a Wild West. I mean, you can buy flour, you can buy whatever you want right across the river. So, they're.
Including cannabis?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's-
Flour,
and it's-
straight up flour.
And they've never legalized it, right? Oh, wait, no, you're talking about flour, that's,
Yep, flour, cartridges, edibles. I can say I sell higher milligram edibles in Wisconsin than I can in Minnesota, legally. Because they've never put any regulation in. So, but yep, well, thank you. That was my one too.
thanks. Anybody else? Jake, I can't believe you don't wanna come up here and say something. Franklin?
I just came to listen, by the way, but then when I sit there and listen, then I come up with ideas. Franklin Hansen. What happened to our free enterprise in the county? What I mean by free enterprise is years and years ago, we had the country stores, There was no limit on them. Is there a limit now on how many restaurants we can have in Houston County? How many hardware stores we can have in Houston County?
Nope, there isn't.
So then my other question is, I'm gonna be one of those 4 that you're talking about. So then I can buy the other 3 businesses in the county out so I can control all 4? Are you gonna regulate that? Or is the state gonna regulate that?
State, probably, I don't know, that would be something down the road where, the economics would dictate that.
That was a question I raised as far as one
I know.
permit per business entity.
But are you going to police it so that I can't make any money farming, so I gotta get into something new here. So are you gonna limit me from buying the other 3 out
I
if
believe
I had a license?
under the statute, the way I understand it, there's 150 licenses with
Yeah, I heard that.
well, and all that kind of stuff. But it also stated someplace that it only allows 1 per entity, per county or city. So in other words, Minneapolis, I have a license and I have 5 of those, their sub-licenses. I can't put all 5 in Minneapolis. That's the way I read that article.
I'm not sure if that's right or not, but
You know,
that's possible.
That's an interpretation.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's a good question to the state, but the state is regulating the licenses. We're only doing the permitting to get the license. You need a permit to get the license.
What does the county get out of this? Headache?
All we get, yeah,
There you go.
all we get is the registration fee, that's all.
So, I don't wanna take up much of your time here, but your businesses now,
Sales tax goes to state.
to the state? So the businesses then, whatever they make, that's their profit.
Well, but they have a 10% state tax along with the 6.875 sales tax.
So is the state putting the prices on this dope, or is each entity putting the prices on it?
I don't know how all that works. That's up to the businesses to decide the prices.
Supply and demand.
Well, I took up enough of your time. I'm sure there's somebody back here that's got more important questions than I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Should point out too that of that 10% state tax, some of that does come back to the counties for educational purposes to educate the public on cannabis and the use of it for public health and safety. So we'll get some money through public health. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, if that's. Yep. Anybody else? All right, I guess, the public comment, the public hearing part of it is closed. Revert back to our regular meeting here. John, is there something you wanted to add at all to this, or? John is our public health director, but our community services director.
I don't have a lot to add. I know there was some discussion about this. If you have a license, how many can you have in certain places? At our joint board of health, where we had the Office of Cannabis Control do the presentation a couple weeks ago, they had noted that in the current statute, if you have a license, yes, you can have 5 sites, but you can't have more than 1 site in a city, and you can't have more than 3 in a county.
So then, what?
I think that's what Commissioner Severson was
Yep.
referring to.
Okay,
So the statute would guide that.
right, right.
Thank you.
So
But we
presumably,
could be more restrictive than the statute and only allow 1 in the county.
Our only restriction is the 1 per 12.5. Am I wrong?
We in our ordinance can put a restriction if it's more restrictive than what the county allows,
I'd
what the
defer
state
to,
allows.
I'd defer to Sam on the legality of that.
That's typically usually you can be more restrictive. That's the general rule of thumb, is we can be more restrictive. But to be honest with you, this is kind of a goofy statute, because the idea here is to promote anything that's gonna pump the brakes on this. There is pushback on that. I mean, because the statute seemed to say 1 per 12.5, and all of a sudden you're getting that reading that it's 2. And so a lot of this where you'd think it would make common sense, it doesn't sometimes. And so, but the general rule of thumb would be yes, that it would be, if we're more restrictive, you're safe on that.
In watching the kind of the process through the legislature, there was a lot of emphasis placed on not allowing local municipalities to say, we're going to legislate this or make an ordinance that makes it unavailable in our municipality, in our county or city. So I think that's what you're referring to. If you become more restrictive, you may open yourself up to
Litigation.
litigation. But as I understood it from the Office of Cannabis Management, you get a license, you can have as many as 5 sites, but you can't have more than 1 site per city, and you can't have more than 3 sites per county. So the statute may address Commissioner Burns' thing, where one licensee comes in and takes all 4 licenses.
Yep.
If I understood what they were saying from the Office of Cannabis Control. Does that sound like what we heard that day, guys?
Yeah, you're right.
So that's the only thing I would mention today. Unless you have other questions of me.
My only question is, instead of 3, putting the limit on 1, if we wanted to allow 4 people to have an opportunity and.
And I get where you're coming
instead of
from.
one person gets 3 and somebody else gets 1.
Right, it's, open market or, you know, you're not establishing a monopoly, so to speak. But I guess I would defer to Sam on what your potential liability would be if you restrict at that level.
Well, I mean, there's always liability in everything, but.
Yeah.
We're not gonna get 4.
Well, and I think, well, and it's sort of just a general overview. I think it's a good thing to go back, what we talked at that work session. This is a living document. What we do now, because I just really envision the Office of Cannabis Management moving to goalposts.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
We were told that up at AMC that, you know, they're gonna address this, cannabis thing again. So there's probably gonna be more rule changes this legislative session, so.
And you may need to adjust your.
And we're gonna, this is gonna, like you said, a living document. It's something where we're gonna have to keep going back to and change because we're doing something, not doing something, or we're not, you know, doing something wrong or whatever, so.
And I guess that kind of circles back to the question about your liability on this. I mean, if we would do that, I mean, you'll get a letter from my office, the board chair will get a letter from the AG's office saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. And then we'll discuss about it, how we want to deal with that. So it's not like they're really gonna, usually you'll get some heads up, get an opportunity to say, hey, maybe you're not in compliance and you should do something different.
I just, I guess in summary, my thoughts are is that, first of all, we came up with this number of registrations of 4 because we were hearing or understood that 2 municipalities, La Crescent and Caledonia, were seriously looking at having their own ordinance, okay? But that's probably why we came up with that 4 instead of more, because I understood 3 in one area and 3 in another area, that's whatever. Another thing I was just looking at too, on that there 3.15, that 1,500 feet. I could see some adjustment personally, but we don't want to have them too close together either. But you know, that's just a thought that I could see some maybe cutting in half to 750 or something like that. But that's just for discussion.
So Sam, I got a question. County sets the number at 4. The city, let's say Caledonia and La Crescent do their own ordinances, and they have, each of them decide to have 2. Does that mean we're still, we still have room for 4 more?
Yeah, whatever number, so use your example there, if it's 2 and 2 in the municipalities, then you just add 4 to that number. So if their 2 and 2 is 4 plus our 4, there'd be 8 in the county, potentially. Or if they'd have 2 and 3, then you'd be at 7.
Okay.
But if they don't pass the ordinance,
And they're under our
whole
umbrella.
county is under, it's gonna be
Yep.
4.
Yep. And we anticipate, I would, that certain municipalities may not. I mean, may not choose to do this. I mean, that seems what you're seeing across the state. Some are in, some are out. And they usually take a look at the ordinance and just see how it affects them, if it meets their needs.
So going back to section 4 on the temporary cannabis events, we were gonna eliminate that, correct? Along with added language for mobile retail.
So no truck shops can drive into town, you mean?
No, like, yeah, no cannabis trucks, whatever you wanna, you know, keep referring to food trucks, but,
Same type.
yeah.
The truck could be hauling, be just transporters,
Well,
not
that's just
sales
The
places,
transporting part, yep.
those sales trucks.
So then it goes back to that 1,500 feet. You guys wanna change that, or?
Well, like I said, I could see some change, but I don't wanna have them next door to each other.
So you
Open discussion.
want to remove 4? Or you want to keep 4 but include, or prohibiting cannabis trucks?
Well, it's the temporary cannabis events we're eliminating, right?
That was my understanding, I guess that's,
Yep.
okay.
And along with, mobile retail. I don't know if that's where that would, I don't know if that's where that would go.
I was gonna say, so it's like, what I would envision, what we'd think of as food trucks, but this would be for
Right.
cannabis.
I don't know where that would go.
I
in
don't
the-
know if that is, I would have to take a look in here. I think it's probably, maybe sort of kind of covered in his, in the section 3.2, but if that's a concern, we can have language in there that specifically deals with that, or I will see what 3.42 says in regards to it. Maybe 3.42 addresses concerns.
Okay.
Another question for you, Sam. So retail business. You've got micro business, macro business, or meso business, and retail sales. Is the retail limitation of 4 cover all 3 of those, or is it only retail and meso can have theirs and macro can have theirs?
The way I read this at this point is that it covers, that 4 is,
All 3?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
So do you guys want to address this 1,500 feet for, retail businesses within 1,500 feet of the main entry point?
I think we should address it.
What do you want it to
We
say?
got a lot of different opinions.
Takes just a majority to.
I just threw out a number of going halfway 750, but that's just a number to start with.
1,500 feet is basically a 5-block radius, is
Yeah.
what you're pointing out.
350 feet is 1 block.
And we're already limiting them to a business district. Because it can't be in a residential district. So how many of your business districts would be able to support something with a 5-block radius?
Well, Crescent might.
I mean, that's kind of that's the idea of having it in there.
Caledonia,
Distance from front to front, you mean?
a
Door to door.
1,500 square foot radius.
We're not doing the door-to-door.
But say you don't have your own ordinance in the city of Caledonia, we're just gonna pretend you're not doing your own ordinance. In the city of Caledonia, at the stoplights in Caledonia, a 5-block radius, would that cover the majority of your business district?
Yeah, it would, and then that would 100% run into the other proximity,
Okay. No.
churches, schools, all that.
Thank you. Now let's take La Crescent, the Main Street and Walnut intersection. So that'd be where the Quillens IGA is, where the city hall is, a 5-block radius of that. Wouldn't that cover just about the whole business district of La Crescent?
Well, if you go from one end to the other, if you go from.
You have a radius, 1,500 square
Are
foot
you going
circle.
radius, using radius, it would.
Because that's, entryway to entryway would cover a radius. I think that would cover just about your whole business district in La Crescent as well.
Here's the radius.
If you do a radius, now you throw in your churches and schools and that. Polka, same way. Brownsville, same way. Heighton, same way. Looks a little tight to me, you know?
Give us a number.
I'd be happy at 500, just like we use for playgrounds and we use for treatment facilities and we use for daycares and whatnot, 500. So I think 500 is a good number.
Well, you wanna keep them in the business districts, you don't.
Right,
want- you
we
don't
have to
want
keep it
them-
in the business district. That's
You
the
don't want
point
them
I'm
down
making.
in the residential selling it out of a house, so you wanna keep it in.
I can compromise to the 500.
Just gives you an idea of your circle, so we know what we're talking about here.
So we'll lower that to 500.
I'm okay.
Work?
Seem to have a consensus for that. Anything else?
We change that to 5.
So do we want to approve this today, or we want to come back? I mean, you're going to be gone for a while, aren't you, Sam?
Yeah, and what I would suggest is, I could get I'll be back on the 23rd, so that week there, I'll be able to get a draft out to the board if this went, assuming it went to you guys on the 31st.
31st?
I could get you a draft, so you'd have 3-4 days to look at it prior to that. But I would just change this, and then I'll work with Amelia on this and just see what does 342 give us as language? Is that language in 342 meet what the board wants here today? There may be some of these things that we're talking about, whether it's the food trucks or whatever, maybe 342 has language in it that would be acceptable.
I can get you a copy of the Washington counties.
I was thinking that, I was thinking myself, I'll get that too.
Yep.
Give me something to read when you're flying back.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, Amelia, you want to add?
No, I guess my question would be process related, and that, do you guys want, if we're gonna make these edits, do you want to have another public hearing, or would you just be fine?
Well, I don't think
Doing
we
a
can
final
have another
review.
public hearing.
We shouldn't have to have another public hearing, seeing as we had this one here, but
We voiced all of our concerns.
No. I don't know that one's required, I guess. I was just looking to see what your,
Well, I
guys would like.
suppose, do we need a motion to adopt this with changes?
He's gonna do it the 31st.
I think.
well, he wants to review to make sure
Yeah.
everything's, and we'll vote on it on the 31st. I mean, we'll certainly have public comment at that meeting, so. Anybody wanted to comment on it?
sounds like a plan.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else want to bring anything up?
Sam?
Is there a deadline, I'm just asking, is there a deadline when this is supposed to be done? As far as cities, they have to have their ordinance in place by a certain time. Here, the county has to have theirs in place at a certain time.
There's no set deadline. It was supposed to, the state is supposed to have their stuff going here by January 2025, but obviously that's getting pushed back to March. So that's why some counties are still thinking they got some time here to get something put together here, so. But we need to have this in place before they start doing the issuing licenses.
The reason I asked that question, if Caledonia and La Crescent decide they don't wanna monkey with it, then are you gonna change your numbers in the county or leave them alone? That's the reason I asked that question.
Something we'll have to look at.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Like
are
Sam
both,
said, it's a living document. We can change it anytime.
We're gonna have to probably change it, so.
I believe they're both in progress, or in process though, aren't they? Like they have drafts and,
I know Caledonia, La Crescent's went to their board already.
We'll change the language on ours to cover full adult use THC. We should probably have that hearing on January 27th. So we'll be right behind you, but same reason we were gonna move it through this coming Monday, but the lottery got sued out of existence, so we felt there was no reason to rush it. And that's where we're at.
All right. There's no other comments. I guess the meeting is adjourned.
We have, because we called it to order, do we have to move it to adjourn?
You want to make a motion to move to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.